So on February the 18th, I got an email asking me to do this lecture. I'll be honest with you, I got a little anxious about it. Because when I was in training, I'm a pulmonologist who wanted to do sleep, and you can imagine how what I liked was sleep disorder breathing. That's sleep apnea, and you all have heard about it. So this time, I'm being asked to talk about the effects of circadian rhythms and sleep, and somehow connected to Dr. Fox's lecture. And that wasn't my strength. And for a second, I even thought, like, do I ask somebody else to do the lecture? You know, somebody who would be a better speaker. But then I realized that I go see patients in clinic every day, and my patients have more now problems with not being able to go to bed, staying late at night, up, doing different things, than truly just sleep apnea. So in a way, I said, well, this is a good challenge because I'm seeing these patients all the time. And even though I haven't done a lecture on it, it's something that I think everybody has as a real problem. So hopefully this lecture will enlighten you into some of those things. Now, I did like the fact that it is nice to give a lecture of something that has interested humanity forever. As you can see here in this picture, these are from the Greek people, the gods of hypnos, which is sleep, right? And then the person laying next to him in the dark is the god of death. These two were the children of another god, which was Nyx, which is the god of night. And it's interestingly that they were twin brothers. So sleep and death were twin brothers. And much of the belief was that it's a stage, right? You're awake, you go to sleep, then you die. And a lot of people wanted to sort of think that one day when they die, they will die in their sleep, correct? It's better than suffering, dying in a hospital on a ventilator or intubated. Unfortunately, it kind of goes the other way around. If you don't sleep enough, you're more likely to die. And that's what the research has shown. And that's particularly true for people that sleep less than 6 hours per night. And it's not only dying, but it's all the other things that I listed there, which include hypertension, strokes, you know. But even though those may take years to really appear, some of the effects of short sleep are quite rapid. So you ever run into somebody who didn't sleep the night before, and you go ask them something, and the answer is like, what? And they're irritable, right? And why is that? Because they didn't sleep well. And if that perpetuates itself, and now it's happening on a weekly basis or every day for some people, a person at some point has a tremendous sleep debt and is so sleep deprived that he's irritable all the time. That may be the reason why he got divorced, you know? Or why he's sort of the person nobody wants to talk at work with. So sleep disorders really are very prevalent and affect our everyday behavior. And that's why I think it's important to learn more about this. Now, sleep is regulated by two mechanisms. Dr. Fox touched on that in animals, and this is true for humans too. There's one animal, though, that is very interesting, which is dolphins. And dolphins have one ability that humans don't have. If we had it, then I think we could perform even better, is that they can sleep with only half their brain at a time. That's why they're always swimming. Now, studies show they can do it up to 15 days. They probably can do it longer. It's just that the study was cut short at 15 days. So we don't know, right? You know, but they sleep one half of the brain, the other one stays active. And they have an echo-like system, and they're able to still be very precise on what they do while half of the brain is resting. If we had that, we would be like superhumans. That'd be great, right? So on these systems that we have what we call the process C and the process S. The C is the circadian rhythm, which is what Dr. Fox talked about. It has to do with the sort of inner clock of 24 hours. It's really 25, right? You know, but it gets entrained because of our 24-hour clock that we set, you know, and it gets affected by light exposure and melatonin levels. The process S is more of a homeostatic process, and that has to do with how we push ourselves to stay awake. And as we do that, we also build the need to sleep then. So you're sleepier when you stayed awake longer, right? And now you need to get what? Catch-up sleep. because I had 2 days, I had to cram for a test, or prepare these papers for my boss, so now I need to get some sleep back. The problem is that that homeostatic system doesn't really allow us to get all the sleep we lost. So if I'm doing this on a daily basis, that I'm staying awake longer, I should get more time to sleep, but that doesn't happen because I still set up my clock alarm at 6 in the morning because I gotta be at work at 7. So I'm building up a sleep debt through the years. And if you look at a single day to try to understand a little better how things work, you'll see that the light of the sun influences really the times that you get melatonin. And the production of melatonin starts at around 9:30 at night. You're going to end up having a peak a little later, which is when you're going to go to sleep. And then it's going to stop in the morning. If we were to pay attention to all these things, you would always want to go take your test somewhere between 10 and 12 in the morning, right? Because you're more alert, able to process and concentrate better at that time. But this clock also tells you that, and I think you mentioned that, we don't only just regulate through the circadian rhythm and melatonin and other hormones, but such as growth hormone, but also temperature and other things, and your blood pressure spikes. So how you affect the circadian rhythm can affect many other bodily functions. It is also important to understand this because everybody has a slightly different clock. So there are people that have a disease where they sleep later and their clock is shifted. And it's shifted in such a way that when their minimum temperature occurs, it's at a later time. And that is important because if they get exposure to light before that minimum drop in temperature, that's called the nadir temperature of the body, they will shift their sleep forward. So they're going to get delayed even more. And that means that they're going to have more insomnia. So when you hear people say, oh, you got to get light in the morning, that's going to help you fall asleep sooner. That's only provided that that light exposure was after you had that nadir in temperature. Okay? So circadian sleep disorders are divided into mainly these ones here. And of course, we had 20 minutes, so I know that I can go into depth into all of them. So I was going to mostly pick on delayed sleep phase syndrome, or delayed sleep-wake rhythm is the new name. The other ones you've heard about them, that the folks talk about, the non-24-hour, which happens in blind people. And it's a nice description on the frogs because actually 70% of blind people only have non-24-hour. And the other ones, I guess, somehow they're getting activation at a level that they're able to control and have a rhythm of melatonin. There was a study, though, that showed also that in humans, there was sensitivity to light that would affect your melatonin rhythm if you expose light to the back of the knees. So that could be like your frog, right? Only problem is that to do that study, they had to keep people awake and expose them to things, and the only thing they didn't control is that they allowed them to watch TV, right? Which is blue light, right? So repeat studies show that no, apparently humans do not regulate through exposure of light to skin organs. So the other disorders, you've seen them as well. But the thing that was curious to me when I was looking at this is that, again, I was doing the lecture thinking I didn't see too much of this before, but I'm seeing more. And I think I'm seeing more because when it comes to delayed sleep-wake rhythm, which really turns into saying I can fall asleep at night, it's taking me 1-2 hours, perhaps we have more of that because of environmental issues and not the true disorder. The disorder really requires you to be a night owl, and that means that you have to have a delay of at least 2 hours. Most people are like 4 hours or more. So these are people that go to sleep at 3-4 in the morning, and they still work, so they're getting up at 7. So they're functioning on very, very little sleep. And you can imagine how that is going to affect your professional life. So in this new era, the things that have happened is that we are working longer. We're also working differently. And I was thinking of the people that work at home. I have patients like that. And some of them that work at home, they don't work our hours because the job they have, for instance, is they support eBay on sales with somebody in India who's working in a different time zone. So they're actually awake part of the night doing customer service. And then they try to function with the rest of the society here. You can imagine how that can be extremely hard. And all that support is not done on an old phone, it's on a cell phone and a screen and a computer, which is blue light. And blue light is not just having that pretty sort of blue sort of animal with the light radiating that color. Actually, blue light is, to our eyes, is just white light, right? It's just artificial light that has a wavelength of around 380 to 500 nanometers. And the sun is the biggest producer of blue light. And it's interesting because I was doing this lecture, I started shifting off into other things, so learning why is the ocean blue, but when I get a bucket of water, it's not blue anymore. My fellows are laughing because some of them didn't know the answer. You know? We may touch on that. But sleep is important, and everybody probably has had this feeling, right? You work really hard all day. Does anybody know who's Lord Byron? He was a poet, you know, an English poet from the 1800s. He wrote Don Juan. So everybody probably knows who Don Juan the book is, right? But Don Juan was supposed to be like a Romeo, but it was the other way around. He was a guy who was very shy and was easily seduced. But in history, it cannot change. You know, so. But you feel like this, and yet you go to bed, and you can't sleep. And that sucks, right? So life, I think, is about finding balance. You need to work, you need to sleep, you need to have fun. I read all the time these things that say you got to have work-life balance. But I was thinking about it the other day. Well, what do you mean by that? I mean, work is life. So how am I going to balance something that is already part of what I need to balance? I think they're talking about this, and that's why I scratched it. It's work and fun, right? So the rest, because when you go to work, you're still having life. And I like to think that when I go to work, I still have some fun at work too. You know, that I can laugh with the people I work with, which are those people that you see there. Some of them are sitting on the back now. You know, but then you have your family and you have friends. That's one of my friends from high school. And the other two fellows are fellows from our fellowship program here that we're training. So we were trying to sort of show them a little taste for Peruvian food in Washington, D.C. And the rest is my family. My daughter likes to fly, and she decided to take me and my mother flying one day. And then you get that right balance, hopefully, and that allows you to also balance your life with also your sleep, right? Because if you don't sleep enough, I already say you're going to die early, then you're not going to get to have as much fun, right? All right. So when you see the patients, and this is something that happens all the time, people say, well, I go to bed, you know, and I lay there on the bed and I'm looking at the ceiling and I cannot do anything, I can't sleep, you know, so then I get up and I start watching TV. And then I'm wondering, like, so you can't sleep? Is that really the problem? Or you don't want to sleep? You know, and you don't know that you don't want to sleep. So if you really can't sleep, then you have this. And this is a true disorder. If you were to define it, this is it. It runs in families. It's got the genes that I listed there as factors that involve it. You're going to be at least 2 hours delayed, but most people are 4 or more. And there isn't a whole lot of therapy that works because you're genetically built differently. So maybe the CRISPR technology will allow us to inject some gene into somebody and change it, you know, so that you don't get it anymore. Or if you have a family that has the predisposition, you know, when they're going to get a kid, maybe they'll modify it like they did in China to prevent HIV or other things, right? But so far, what do we have? We had this thing of giving you light to try to sort of shift a little bit your circadian rhythm, and maybe a little utility of melatonin, but not much more. Yeah. Then you have the other people, the ones that don't want to sleep because they're stubborn and they have stuff to do. right? And those, to me, are my majority of delayed sleep-wake patients. It's not that they can't sleep, it's that, well, I wasn't all that sleepy, you know, I was hurting in my hips, so I went to the kitchen, and then I started doing a puzzle, you know, and I started eating a little cereal while I'm doing the puzzle. And then they were showing on the news that there was an earthquake in Haiti, and I started looking at that, and next thing you know, it's 4 in the morning and I can't sleep. And the next night there is an earthquake somewhere else, you know? So they still can't sleep, and it keeps happening. And that's procrastination, right? And then I said, like, so there is a disorder which is a sleep procrastination. I figure I'm going to give it a name and make it my own. Well, too late, because somebody else apparently thought of it already, so it wasn't just my original idea. But it's real. And the funny thing is that we are all procrastinators. Or are you not? Do you do everything you need to do right now, or you put it off because, oh, well, you know, I think I need a coffee to build a little energy so that I can get it done, right? So we all do that. We're all a little bit of a procrastinator, right? And it is worse nowadays. Why? Because I was doing my lecture, and I'm like, okay, so he's going to talk in animals about the influence of light. So blue light, where does blue light come from? You know, so that's interesting. So I started kind of working and reading about the blue light, and next thing you know, I was thinking, I look like this guy. Because I had not even done one slide, but I knew about the wavelength of the light, some studies of potential blindness related to exposure of blue light, and then it was getting really late at night, and I'm like, I need to put some slides together for this lecture, you know? And then remember I told you I got an email on February the 18th, and I'm like, I only have 3 weeks. You know, and I'm on call, and I have other things to do, so I don't have much time for this, so I need to concentrate. So I didn't quite put the sort of little wood pieces there, you know, but then my dog was also not falling asleep either, because apparently there was a good movie to watch, you know. So I realized this can affect everybody, you know. And then as I'm researching this stuff, I said it's all this guy's fault, you know. Do you guys know who's this guy? Yes. So it's Thomas Alva Edison, right? So he invented these light bulbs. And then I'm reading about the light bulbs, and I'm thinking, so those are the old light bulbs, and these are the new ones. You talked about it in the hospitals. This is the stuff, right? That is blue light. Looks white as it can be, but it's blue light. So the difference between that light, this one, and this one is that all the energy-efficient new LEDs and fluorescent lights are way more capable of producing blue light, right? So I kept reading about that, and I'm like, that's interesting. Then I found this picture, because I figured, well, why is the sky blue, right? Well, has this anything to do with the lecture? I don't even know. I mean, I'm, again, procrastinating, right? But I'm late at night, I'll tell you that, you know? So I'm not sleeping myself that well. I found that it's blue because you sort of bounce off the blue light from the sun, from the particles that float in the atmosphere, and that makes it blue. And then that color reflects on the water, and if there's enough mass of water, the ocean looks blue. Otherwise, it's transparent, right? But by the way, when I found this picture, I said, that's really cool. Is that the sky, actually? Or what is that? So those are salt plains in Bolivia, right? So you have the sky on half of the picture, the top one. The other half is not. People go there to do weddings because it's nice, because they stand there and it's almost like a lake and a mirror, right? And then I said, that's pretty cool. So that may connect to this. And then I said, and it connects even more to the gentleman I showed you before. Why? Because among all the things that Thomas Alva Edison invented, he also invented cadmium iron batteries. And you may not know this, but there were electric cars before we had combustion engines. 1810, 80s, I think they had the first electric engine. You know? And under this is the largest reserve of lithium in the world. So that's how we're going to get more batteries. So we get more light. So we can then continue using our iPads at night because they're going to last for a long time. And we can fall asleep with the iPad next to our face, right? So blue light hits your retina, right? No doubt it gets there. I asked my dog to pose for this picture, and look at that. All the light is in the retina. So if you get that, you're not going to sleep, right? So this is blue light. And what's the problem with blue light is that it's on all the electronic stuff we have, and we use it in this country close to 8 hours a day. And that means that we're not just using it at work, we're using it at home too. Because at work, hopefully, you do some work that doesn't require you to be all the 8 hours looking at nothing but the screen, right? So you go home, and you're doing it at home. And because we've had this change in work hours and things, you're entertaining yourself at night. And you're doing it with an iPad, with your computer, having a little fun on that, but then not sleeping and dropping your melatonin levels to the point that when you close the iPad, you don't have that hormonal drive to fall asleep anymore. That's going to delay your sleep. Is that the true classical genetic familial predisposed delayed sleep-wake syndrome? No, but it is still causing the same effects. And in the morning, the next day, your alarm clock is going to go off at 6:30 in the morning, and you're going to grab that blue light right away, right, to look at it without glasses really close to make sure that you're awake so you to go to work, right? So here, you can see how this graph here shows you how you would have melatonin influenced by the sun, which is the main source of blue light, but the reality is that now you're expanding that sun exposure way later. So you're decreasing your melatonin. And melatonin, it's also an interesting hormone which may have many other beneficial effects that have to do with antioxidant effects and anti-inflammatory effects. And some old studies showed that even some cancers on patients that receive melatonin will have prolonged survival compared to the patients that didn't. You know, meaning that there may be some additional benefits of that. And if you don't sleep, like I said before, in most cases, that means that you're going to decrease the amount of total sleep. Because if you're delayed and you don't work, and you're, I don't know, self-sufficient, rich, that you don't need to work, and you just go to bed at 2 in the morning, but then wake up at 10, you'll probably be fine. But if you're required to work, and you got to get to work at the same time everybody gets to work, then you're going to sleep less. So you're going to build a sleep debt, and your energy level is going to drop. So what do these people here have in common? And what else do you think they have in common? Money? Sure, they're all rich, sure. But you know what they have in common? They're all successful, and the common thing to them being successful is they all have a coach. Think about it. None of these people got there without having a coach. Somebody telling them that something could be improved upon, right? That means having an open mind and willing to listen to somebody else. So when my patients come to my clinic for problems like this, I'm really just a coach. I'm the guy who's going to listen to what they tell me, and I'm going to say, any chance you could maybe do that work before and turn off that cell phone by 8? Could you try to do this at another time? Or that, right? No? There you go. So in life, if you want to be successful, I think these are important things you need to do. You have to understand yourself and know what is it that you're good at, right? But also be humble and realize that you could improve on some things. And you have to be able to build relationships with people that hopefully will be comfortable enough so that they will be able to come and tell you, hey, why don't you stop doing that? You know, that's annoying everybody else. Turn off your cell phone. You know, it's not good. You know, so when you go to a lecture, it's not a good thing, right? So you can do those things, right? But for that, you need to have that trust. You know, you need to be able to take criticism, thinking that it's not an attack on your person, but it's just an advice for you to get better. And I'm saying this because in reality, many of these sleep problems pertain to just a modern society and world. And this world is getting more complex, and when people seek healthcare, sometimes they don't realize that some of that healthcare can be provided by their own families. You know, and as a family, we got to be able to help each other. So the stuff I'm telling you, stuff that you can go and tell your brother, it's like, don't do this, you know. That's not healthy, you know. Which is the same advice that you're going to get when you go to a doctor's office. The difference, though, is that I'm going to tell you today at 3 in the afternoon, and you may forget about it 2-3 days later. But if it's your wife telling you that every day that you need to turn off the computer and stop reading the sleep studies at 1 in the morning, which is what she told me, you know? So that maybe at some point you can start falling asleep a little sooner, right? You know? And we need to start procrastinating a little less. Because it's cool to procrastinate. I learned this stuff through my procrastination, you know? I was just thinking about like, oh, how are they going to get that lithium from there? And then I learned that you need 500,000 gallons of water to get 1 ton. And by the way, I did not misspell ton, because I also learned that a ton written with double N and E is different than 1 ton with 1 N. You know, somebody told me, hey, that's not the way you write that. I'm like, yeah, because that's metric. The other one means 2,000 pounds. So I really procrastinated on this one, you know. But getting back to it, you need that sleep coach, right? Somebody who is observing you, right? Isn't that what they say the dogs do? They're observing you, you know, but who can speak. So he can come and tell you, stop doing that, right? And if you listen to none of the stuff I said and you don't really care and you're still going to keep the cell phone on and you're still going to look at it at night, then buy a pair of these ones, which block blue light. You know, they may not be perfect, but it's better than nothing, you know. And then, because I procrastinated, at some point when I was about to finish my lecture, I said, okay, I'm done. That's good. And it's maybe shameful to say this, but this was last night. So I got the email I said on the 18th, and I kept thinking, how am I going to do the lecture? And my idea came together finally yesterday. So then I went, when everybody was asleep, and I took a picture of the clock there. And that was the time. And then I started thinking, oh, I really hope I go to bed and I'll fall asleep now. Because I've been doing nothing but looking at a screen. And I got lucky. I fell asleep a little bit, you know. So that was good. Those are my daughters. And I put them there because the last sentence there is true. Always laugh when you can. It is cheap medicine. And that was also written by Lord Byron, who unfortunately died very young in his 30s. So that's all. I hope you guys learned something. And if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Rubio. So now we have time for both Dr. Fox and Dr. Rubio to answer questions for a few minutes. So if you both come back up, keep your mics on, and the floor is open. I'll just kind of moderate as best I can. If you have a question, raise your hand. And turn off the lights, please, Brad. Thank you. And stand up so we can hear. Yep, right here. Stand up.
Oh, okay. So great talk. This is for either of you. So I saw on one of your slides that it said 2:30 p.m. Fastest reaction time. It's also the best time to take a nap. I know a lot of people that like to do it. Is there any excuse for naps, folding them into your life, based on the information you have here about circadian rhythms?
For excuse to take a nap would be only if you have narcolepsy. Otherwise, no.
Yes, please stand up.
Well, that's a tough one.
I'm going to let you handle this one.
So when people cannot fall asleep again from an arousal, to me it tells me also that there may be other problems, and that they may essentially have either sleep apnea, or they may have some degree of mood disorder, or that maybe they're napping too much in the daytime, so they don't have the sleep drive to sleep longer at night. So essentially it would be the process S we were talking about there, that they didn't build that sleep drive because they napped in the daytime. So now anything that wakes them up in the middle of the night, they cannot fall asleep again. So that's not an easy answer, because you need to look at a lot of other things too. Hopefully I gave you a little insight. So.
In cultures that have reposo, from say noon till 4 p.m. every day, how does that affect their circadian rhythm, and does that disturb their nocturnal sleep pattern?
So that's me again. Okay, there you go. So I'll tell you. My answer is going to be I don't know, but then I'm going to tell you that astronauts have 96 sunsets a day because of the way the space shuttle orbits, and they take cat naps throughout the entire day, and their circadian rhythm is all screwed up. So they've developed new light therapy at different wavelengths to try to combat that, to simulate artificial day and night within the space station. So I'm assuming that somebody who would be having 4 hours, where they get sort of in the dark and things change, they're going to be affecting their circadian rhythm as well. And that's potentially going to affect their ability to then sleep as long at night.
So when we do that in a lab, we call it forcing an ultradian paradigm. So you could take an animal model, or a graduate student if you have one at hand. Is it an animal model?
Yeah.
Okay. And you could force 3.5 hours of light, 3.5 hours of dark, and they won't actually entrain to those 2 periods because it's too short for our clock. So in some cycles, it will actually all line up where you'll feel normal, but if you keep doing it, you'll eventually destroy your rhythms, and even if you're getting sleep during the day, you'll have trouble at night from those sorts of activities.
For astronauts, apparently they had decreased performance, because they're not there only for a couple of days, they're for a long time, right? So,
either one of you, stand up, we'll go to the next.
Mine's very simple. The benefit of wearing an eye mask to sleep, is that help? I know it helps me, because my husband reads.
If you sleep next to somebody who's watching TV, yes. if the room is dark, I would say no. So.
Yes, please stand.
Could you mention how much and when you affect circadian rhythm, and also if you do?
So certainly in animal models. So the question was, does when you eat affect your circadian rhythm? And certainly there's lots of cases in animal models where, although light is the biggest way to entrain, photo entrain, lots of other things can do it. So if you took light away, but you provided food at a certain time, you would be able to entrain off of that environmental stimuli, which is food. And certainly some organisms do that aren't exposed to light often or at all. And their clock might be different, but it can entrain to the availability of food, like worms do that, in fact.
And I think you were talking about the Zeitbergers, and essentially you entrain to different cues, if you will, and those don't always have to do with just light, so definitely the time you eat and other things affects that as well. So.
In the front, can you stand up, please?
I was a little bit confused. There's only 24 hours in the day, and you kept talking about 25 hours. How did you get that?
So if you were to let me put you in a dark room and take away all signs to the outside world, your body would think that the cycle was 25 hours. So you would mentally and physiologically think that night would fall actually an hour later every day. So your cells and your body actually has a built-in 25-hour-a-day clock, and you use light and environment to say, no, it's 24. It's still 24. Still 24 today. So you keep telling yourself and using these cues to readjust that clock to be truly 24 hours. And we have to have it plastic like that so that when we do crazy things like daylight savings, we can adjust. If we were all built with 24-hour clocks, we would have to live at the equator. We would not be able to have seasons because we would not be able to adapt to it.
Another way to think about it is like, imagine you have a clock that is running too fast and you had to reset it every morning.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. You're resetting it to get back on time. So.
Yes, please stand.
So my daughter gave me a Fitbit for Christmas, and she said, I think you might be interested in tracking your sleep with that. And I said, well, I don't need to do that. I sleep like a rock every night. Nah. Well, it's been really interesting. I average 7 hours of sleep a night, but only about an hour of that is deep sleep. Should I be concerned? And I wake up during the night and I don't even know it. So says my Fitbit.
Yes. So somebody I recently saw showed me the graph in their iPhone, and the amount of REM sleep, deep sleep, and all those things. The funny thing is that we don't really have technology to even do a real study on a patient at home that can tell us with reliability how much of real deep sleep versus non-deep deep sleep do they have, or if it's really REM sleep, which is the rapid eye movement, supposedly the sleep that is allowing you to consolidate your memory and rest a little more. So the answer is that I don't know how much you can trust that. And I would be concerned if I also wake up not feeling refreshed. If during the day I'm feeling tired or fatigued or I'm irritable or I'm not performing as well, then I would say there is some correlation between the fact that maybe I'm not getting the quality of sleep I need to get based on this sort of Fitbit and my symptoms. But if on the other hand, I'm feeling great and I wake up refreshed and everything I want to do I can do and enjoy my life, I'm going to ignore the Fitbit.
If you two gentlemen were chief medical officers to the White House, what would your advice be to the president?
With respect to sleep?
I think as someone in that position should have no blue light, so just all devices go.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I may tell the president to eat less burgers from the fast food place, So.
What would be the best way to deal with jet lag? So if you fly to Europe and you sleep during the day, or you try to stay awake during the day, and then what do you think?
So one thing is that it depends on where you're going, eastward or westward, because it's easier to move one way than the other. The other thing has to do with how many time zones you're going to travel through, because sometimes if it's not too many, you can just adapt a lot easier. The problem is that it usually takes you about a week to adapt, and by then you're going back. I think people have tried to change the time at which they get exposed to light to see if that can help them acutely. And again, that's going to depend, the light where you get it, depending on where you're going, eastward or westward. And some people try melatonin to force them to sleep when they're trying to a time zone that essentially, on their time clock, they would not be falling asleep because it's not that late, in their house. But now they need to fall asleep a little sooner. They'll take a little melatonin early on, and that has shown some benefit. So it's a long answer. It's almost like a full lecture on that.
So what happens for individuals that have a later sleep time? They go to bed later, they get up earlier. Sorry, they go to bed later and they get up later.
And they get up late?
Yes.
So if they don't have a,
Shifted.
yeah.
So
They get up, they go to bed at midnight, they get up at 10.
so if they're really shifted significantly, they may have the delayed sleep-wake rhythm that we're talking about. And if they can truly get up late because they don't have any social obligations, then honestly nothing happens. They're just out of phase with the rest of us, but nothing really happens to them. The problem is when they cannot get up late anymore because they got to go to work. But you're just living in a world that is a little bit out of phase.
Okay, I have time for maybe 2 more questions. Somebody had their hand up in the back first. Yes, please.
I really just had a comment about the Fitbit. Mine lights up when I turn over at night or move my arm. It lights up to tell me what time it is, and the light is waking me up, so I don't wear it at night. So maybe that's what's happening.
Good point. Yeah.
Put her goggles over your face.
Yeah.
One more question. Yes, please.
What effect would taking melatonin in the evening have on our internal melatonin productions, etc.?
So from an animal model perspective, you would be able to go to sleep and you would still produce melatonin. You produce it when your eyes are shut and you're in dark. So it wouldn't have a negative effect on your endogenous production from that standpoint. And maybe you would start producing it slightly earlier if you fell asleep earlier.
In humans, occasionally when people take too much melatonin, they may feel a little sleepy in the day. That's the only difference. But it's not like a significant danger, but some people will feel a little sleep in the daytime, because they'll have more melatonin on board. So.
Yep.
Okay, please join me in thanking Dr. Fox and Dr. Rubio. And just by way of reminder, tomorrow evening, same time, same station, we'll have traumatic brain injury lecture. We'll have first Animal Farm, Influence of Animal Research on Advancing Treatment for Human Brain Injuries by Dr. Vandevoort from Chair of Biomedical Engineering at Virginia Tech. And then Ringing the Bell on Getting Your Bell Rung by Dr. Prusakowski, who's from the Department of Emergency Medicine and Pediatrics at Carilion. We look forward to seeing many of you tomorrow evening. Thanks again.